April 20-20, 2026. We are in the 5th year, day 56 since the start of the full-scale invasion. Welcome to the Situation Report. In today's report, we will see, some interesting attacks. We will also see attacks on ships, and we'll also see what an absolutely insane trolling stunt took place. Russian schools and their teachers have been repeatedly affected. We'll also review 1 or 2 attacks along the front, among other things. Stay tuned, it's going to be interesting again. But first, are you in the mood for a magic trick? Then take a look at this. The Ukrainians have demonstrated how to make an oil storage facility disappear overnight. At the end of the night, the oil storage facility at the oil refinery and export terminal in Tuapse was hit by Ukrainian drones. Footage shows a massive fire on the site, with large parts of the oil storage facility engulfed in flames. Tuapse is one of the central hubs for oil on the Black Sea. Hits in this area directly affect storage and also disrupt the flames. This means that nothing will be exported anymore. While the Russians mostly target big cities and energy producers, the daily or nightly Ukrainian airstrike once again hits an important oil port. What used to happen once a month, we now see almost daily. What a turn of events. It's really starting to get expensive. And while everything in Russia is getting more expensive anyway, that's obviously a problem, all because of a war that can hardly be won at the moment. Of course, that doesn't go unnoticed. Not only the companies that don't benefit from it, but also Russian mill bloggers, who are increasingly worried about the Ukrainian drone attacks across the country. In their opinion, the current air defense measures are no longer sufficient to stop Ukrainian attacks. Guess which countermeasures they suggested? Radical reforms or shutting down production in Europe were up for debate. I actually found that pretty funny, since the majority of drones used for such attacks don't even come from Europe, but from Ukraine itself. I also find it very interesting that they haven't been able to win a war in Ukraine for 1,517 days, yet they fantasize about carrying out attacks in Europe. Although they might not be entirely wrong about that, because strictly speaking, they didn't actually talk about a military intervention. I think there are more than enough people in Europe and also in Germany who are willing to commit sabotage for Russia's interests. You probably saw my video recently about the Bundeswehr officer who passed on important procurement lists to a lobbyist. And a few months ago, there were also acts of sabotage in many barracks and on Navy ships. At the beginning of German aid to Ukraine, there were also people who followed convoys, scouted out the parking areas, or even set some vehicles on fire. If there were people willing to do that, then there are also those who are dumb enough to sabotage drone manufacturers or developers in Europe for Russia's interests. Although being dumb actually has nothing to do with it. I don't want to digress now, but a few years ago, I saw an old instruction for saboteurs of the German Reich in a museum, which said that you can sabotage the enemy very effectively and with the simplest means. And in the end, it's enough to work your way into one of the lower management positions in a company, like the role of a group spokesperson. And then you just have to schedule a lot of meetings, simulate progress, and be able to justify the lack of progress convincingly. And just like that, they sabotage a company without anyone being able to prove malicious intent. You can simply say, to put it in today's context, that during the development of software, for example for interceptor drones or attack drones, complications occurred, and now the entire code has to be changed again. It will likely take another week for the new drones to be operational. And then, when the week is over, you simply claim that the problem has been fixed, but the integration has created a new bug that still needs to be removed, and so on. And oh man, there's some version control thing that isn't working and blah. People always come up with enough excuses for that. So you present yourself as very committed and goal-oriented on the outside, but you sabotage the entire project. If we want to apply all of this to the present day, an employer must remember this and control it, or problems will arise. So while problems play an increasing role in a war, since many people could sabotage, others at the front could die. Entire cities are leveled to the ground, prices rise, and the standard of living continues to fall. Let's take a look at the real problems that this war can bring. A woman from Tuapse, the city with the currently burning oil port we mentioned earlier, complains that she now has poor living conditions. I love living by the sea with my child. The sea is now absolutely full of this fuel oil. Everything is ruined. What the hell are we even supposed to do here? These damn drones are flying around and tearing everything to pieces. That's the reality I see in countless videos day after day, especially in Russian complaint videos from civilians. Russia starts a war and destroys large parts of the neighboring country, wiping out a large portion of its own population in the process. While the economy's going down the drain, we even heard this at the Moscow Economic Forum, but that's cool and absolutely not a problem. But heaven forbid I can't go swimming in the sea with my child anymore, then the fun is over. Because of course it's the Ukrainians and their drones who are to blame and not the Kremlin, which attacked Ukraine. Because the principle of action and reaction seems to be extremely foreign to many people when you watch such complaint videos. You can see that for yourself. Just take a look around on X, formerly known as Twitter. You'll find plenty of such videos there, or on Telegram as well. The approach is always the same. Something is bad because of the war, but it's never Russia or the Kremlin's fault. It's always the other side, and sometimes even NATO, even though they haven't done anything. In the area around Sumy, Russian forces have launched a mechanized attack, which took place at the location marked by the blue pin, and extended up to the 22nd Brigade, the 21st. The mechanized infantry brigade responded quite quickly and was able to hold and defend its own sector using only drones. It's really interesting how this war has developed here. At first, there were still traditional battles between infantry and vehicles. After that, drones were gradually added, and now it's mainly drones doing the defending, while the infantry stays far away from the action and fights the remaining enemies. And the fact that this happened in just 4 years is pretty crazy, how the doctrine has adapted to drones. But we can also look at another development in this war that has now lasted over 4 years. Drone pilots of the 225th Assault Regiment found a shelter for a Russian tank, or more precisely, an old T-55. Visually remarkable is the improvised additional armor. The crews mounted empty ammunition boxes on the turret and hull. What at first glance looks like a form of spaced armor turns out upon closer inspection to be purely a placebo effect. These thin-walled metal containers offer no protection at all against modern-shaped charges or kinetic impacts. Rather, this field modification highlights the severe shortages of certified reactive armor and the desperation of the crews on the high-tech battlefield. As a result, despite its visual modifications, the T-55 remains an easy target whose survivability against precision weapons is virtually zero. If you've ever seen the movie Pearl Harbor, the U.S. bomber pilots carry out a more or less symbolic attack on Japanese facilities. And to do that, they had to increase their range, which is why they removed the onboard machine guns for air defense to save weight. But so that enemy fighters would still believe they were armed, they attached painted broomsticks where the barrels and muzzles of the former machine guns used to stick out. This is roughly comparable to the T-55 here. It's supposed to look like it's armored there, but when you look closer, it's not. Do you remember this picture? Here, Russian teachers, that is, people of education, made and wore tinfoil hats to symbolize their readiness to protect Mother Russia from external threats. And then they made videos and posted them. It was clearly a troll who incited them to do this so they would make fools of themselves on the internet. As I said, we are also in an information war, and just like many pensioners here fall for the grandchild scam. One woman or another falls for an allegedly rich Kenyan prince or someone else. They just fell for this trick and thought it was a good idea, without thinking that they would make fools of themselves. Well, now he has managed to do it again, and he has targeted teachers again. Because Russian teachers in the Chelyabinsk region read out an edited version of a Hitler speech. 8 out of 12 schools that were asked agreed. The Belarusian activist Vladislav Bohan got the teachers to wear aluminum foil hats as part of a staged campaign. That wasn't from before. And now, 2 years later, to have a Hitler speech read out where the word Danzig was replaced with Donbass and the word Reich with Russia. The teachers then recorded videos so they could be played in front of Russian soldiers for motivation. And they actually did that. This is just a really peak trolling performance we're seeing here. I see great potential in this. Ukrainian strike forces from the primary unit released a video showing attacks on the Russian landing ships Yamal of the Rapucha class and Nikolai Pilchenko of the Tapir class. Neither of the two ships was sunk, but it was mainly the superstructures that were damaged by drones, and they also lost part of the crew, as you can see with a second hit right at the drone's impact site. The video ends with a successful attack on a VJK-1 type radar installation worth about $5 million. Today's report is based on information up until late afternoon. While you're watching the video, I'm currently out volunteering, which is why a small part of the information is missing, especially the more pro-Russian part. As you know, my collection of information consists of about 50% pro-Ukrainian and 50% pro-Russian sources. For the situation map, the ratio is about 60-40. And since the more pro-Russian part is somewhat missing today, we're seeing only positive news for Ukraine. You know, I'm certainly not neutral, but I am objective. If Russians accomplish, invent, or display something new, I include and assess it in the situation report, just as I do for Ukraine, including Russian territorial gains. But the information usually comes in a bit later and therefore wasn't really accessible to me today. On the other hand, there aren't many positive reports on the Russian side either. The war continues with little progress at the front. I don't need to invent anything, otherwise I could post my videos on some other channel and not keep you informed daily as usual and in a brief and concise way. Don't just thank me for that, but especially the regular subscribers and the channel members who keep me motivated and also support the channel financially so that everyone else can still be informed for free. Thanks to all subscribers, channel members, and the Allguy crew. Special thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Reinicke, Sila Dittrich, and Freddie Meyerhofer. Please subscribe, like, comment, and see you in the next situation report.